Hey everyone, welcome. It's Wednesday afternoon, it's 2:30 p.m. It's Innovation Fika with your host, Donny SC Ligonis. A very warm welcome to you all this wonderful Wednesday, another wonderful sunny Wednesday afternoon here in September in Stockholm, Sweden. I hope you have the sun shining where you are as well. As you know, this Innovation Fika is a 30-minute coffee break where I get the great pleasure to interview, or speak to, have coffee with some good old friends that usually also are successful entrepreneurs and incredible innovators. And it's usually a kinder egg of, ideas and success and just great people. That's, I think, the common denominator. It's great people. And we go live. We always do it live because I want to encourage interaction. I want to encourage questions. And like this. Elise, I'm happy to have you here. Thank you for being on our show live today as well. Make sure to listen and ask questions as we go along. Some very, very brief stuff before we start. I will say that make sure to follow me on LinkedIn. Live on LinkedIn every Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. with my Innovation Fika. I post almost every day also on LinkedIn about entrepreneurship, startups, innovation, things that come to mind. Almost daily posts on LinkedIn. And if you want to make sure not to miss anything, you can subscribe to my newsletter. You go to innovationfika.com and you fill in the form there. Or if you're in Sweden, you can text to 71140, text Fika to 71140. I have also started a Patreon page to collect all of my content, my posts, my videos, everything I create is there on Patreon. You can follow me there, follow Innovation Fika on Patreon for free. You don't have to pay anything, but it's a place where I can save both written and recorded video content. So Patreon, Innovation Fika, or follow me here on LinkedIn, where I post daily, of course. Happy to have you on board, everyone. And I should probably just shut up now and start inviting the people, the guest, the person who came to listen. I mean, you didn't come here to listen to me. So without further ado, I will say welcome into the Innovation Fika studio, Mr. Johan Wahlbeck. Hello.
Hello there, Donny. How are you?
Wonderful to see you. Great to see you again. I mean, we've known each other for quite some time. Let's not tell people how long we've known each other.
No. That's good.
But I will say it's been, I mean, I've known you since almost, I'm not going to say since you started. We're going to talk about how you started. But I remember a long time ago when we met and you were doing things, and you've always been doing things. You're one of those people that has always got something going on, and there's always something, there's always a business thing happening around Johan. There's always things happening. And I also read somewhere that you've started some kind of a company that starts things, right? Is that correct?
So that's sorry.
You've got some kind of a concept where you start concepts as well within a branding.
Yeah. It's called the Swedish Concept Factory.
The Swedish Concept Factory. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. That caught my eye the other day, and we can talk about that as well, of course. But before that, Johan Wahlbeck. That's just, who are you? And tell us a bit about yourself for the people who might not know the guy behind all of these brands.
Well, right now I'm a husband, a father to my one son and one bonus son, as we say in Sweden, and actually to do 2 bonus grandchildren. Talking about getting old. But I think, as a person, I am very much of an entrepreneur because I think entrepreneurship is a lifestyle. I think I have to go back to the time when I actually was living in London. And one of the things I did was to organize a jumble sale to raise money. In this case, it was for children in India. And it's about doing things, creating things, and selling things, which I like as well. Yeah. And actually, when I was 7, I actually organized an auction back in Stockholm where half went to help the children and half went to help Johan. So even there, that was actually sort of a business as well for myself. But I actually started my first real company when I was 15. It was called Swede Sweets, and I was exporting Swedish candy to Swedish people living abroad. And that's because of self-experience situation when I was living 2 years in Houston in Texas. and 2 years in London. I couldn't get in hold of Swedish candy. And by saying when it was, I will also say how old I am. But it was far from the internet era. It was 85. So that's my first relationship to entrepreneur. And then since then, I've never been working for anyone else, but for myself, but with other people, but for myself.
And then I think we met when you had sort of started working with an old Swedish brand called Kronan Cykel.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's when we met. And that was a bicycle brand, right?
Yeah, it started that I love skiing. So I started a ski tour operator when I was actually in the army. And then we sent down 4,000 Swedish people every year for adventure skiing. The brand was called Ski Extreme. And it was great fun. And I saw that every time people started to come down, they had new stuff because we were focusing on people with fairly good economy because it was a lot of adventure skiing, which cost money. And everyone had new stuff. And I thought, what are they doing with all this old stuff? And that made me start a company called Sport Recycle, where I bought and sold better sports equipment. And it was mainly skis, snowboards. And this was in the beginning of the 1990s, where people want to explore a lot of new adventurous sports. So mountain biking was big, bicycles, snowboards, telemark skiing. So there was a lot of circulation of products. And one of the things I sold was the original Swedish military bicycles. And I actually managed to get a hold of the FMV, which is the government that buys all this stuff for the army. And I actually got like almost exclusivity of buying all their used military bicycles. And at the time, they become a little bit trendy. So initially, I bought them for 80 Swedish crowns plus VAT. And that's like €8 or like $9. And it was like people were willing to pay 1,000 crowns or like $120 for them. So it was, in 1 year, I bought and sold more than 30,000 units. So wow. I sold them everything they had. And they called me up and said, in 3 days, you have to go to Borås, which is a city outside, on the western side of Sweden. Well, it wasn't in the city, but it was like a farming area outside. And you have to come and pick 3,000 bicycles up. So I had to take like big trucks, 10 of them, and then bring them into my warehouse in Stockholm or to a university destination, Uppsala, Umeå. And then I had people went up there, put posters up in the universities, and then I sold them in 1 or 2 days, 300-400 bicycles. It was insane. Crazy. And then
the actual original Swedish Army bicycle is still, you can still see a lot of them, Kronan Cykel. I mean, out in the traffic.
Just because I couldn't get a hold of more, I decided to produce it myself with a slight upgrade, a little bit more modernized, but almost the same look.
And then I know that you worked with a number of other projects as well. And then you got involved in the what I call the Swedish earphone phenomenon. I mean, all of these Swedish, suddenly they were like, I don't know how many Swedish brands there were that were succeeding and doing well with. And you started something called Urbanista, right?
Yeah, I started that 2000. I started the company earlier, but we got into the audio business 2010. Yeah. But the whole idea behind Urbanista originally was to develop a smart mobile and portable solution for the modern urban person. Because people in Shanghai, Stockholm, Sao Paulo, New York, what they have in common is that they move around in the city environment in the same way. So portability and mobility, they had common ground. So I started out with a folding bike since I had my bicycle experience after selling Kronan bicycle. And then we did a shopping trolley, a modernized, more younger type of design. And then
I remember that one. Yes.
Yeah, we saw quite a lot of them. But then it wasn't until we got into the mobile phone accessory where the audio part became the biggest. Yeah. We started to grow the company quite significantly. And I think it has to do a lot with Spotify, that a lot of Swedish creators wanted to get into the audio business. And that basically was at the same time when a lot of my competitors or people that are working in the same business with audio as I am, actually got the company started. I mean, you have Marshall, you have Happy Plugs, you have Studio, and a lot of other brands that I think at least originate from the success of Spotify.
Yeah. And then now, now you run another audio. What do you call it? Is it an audio accessory company? What do you call it? What do you call DeFunc?
Well, I mean, it's an audio brand, and I sold Urbanista to a German distribution company. 2014, and at the time, I didn't think I was going to get back to the business, but after half a year, almost a year, I started to long back. But the thing is that at the time, it was a very crowded market, very many models and brands out there. So I had to come up with a unique type of offering to the retailers and, of course, to the end consumers. So I started up DeFunc, and now we have a wide collection of earphones, mainly true wireless products. But now also in October, we're launching our first multi-room speaker, which is obviously a slightly more premium product than earbuds. And we are going to challenge Sonos, which is a huge player. And I'm not saying that I expect to get Sonos, but markets where we will focus, we will have a better product offering than them, and we'll take market shares.
But as markets go, now let's, if we're sort of talking about more about, the entrepreneurship side of it, as markets go, I'd say that the one that you're entering now is kind of it might be a mature market, but it doesn't feel that there are, and I'm probably saying something stupid here, but as compared to like the earphone market, the home speaker Sonos market doesn't feel as crowded. It feels a bit sort of more conservative and like an older, more mature market, which is more ripe, if I can say that, for I'd call it disruption or change, or is it anything? What's your comment on that?
No, it's true, and that's also the reason why I entered there. I mean, and I think the main reason for it is that, I mean, basically anyone could contact a producer of earphones in China through internet and order 500 units of their own brand, make their own package, and you have another competitor. To do multi-room speakers is quite a big difference in terms of technical development and costs involved. So that's one of the reasons. And fairly recently, it was much, much more difficult technically wise to do it. But since about a year ago back, it's become easier. And it's there's so many technical reasons why it's difficult to explain here, but it made it easier for competitors to actually compete with Sonos.
Yeah. Well, best of luck with that, of course. I mean, on that specific, we'll see. We'll have you back. We'll have you back here in a year or two in the Innovation Fika episode 67 or something like that, and we'll see how that went. But I know that you feel strongly about some things. I know that one thing that I feel has always been one of your strongest traits as an entrepreneur is your ability to sell. I mean, not be afraid to sell what you're trying to sell. Many people that I know that are starting out and might want to be entrepreneurs, or they call themselves entrepreneurs, they might even be afraid of selling. They don't want to sell. And I know you feel strongly about the whole sort of, go out and sell it.
Yeah, I think the thing is that I don't know if I would. I think I'm actually a great salesperson, but it makes it so much easier if you're convince yourself, and if you yourself develop the product. No one else might not think it's great, but I think it's great. Otherwise, I wouldn't have produced it. And if you think it's great, and you basically develop the product from your own feelings on what's good and what's bad, it makes it so much easier. So if you gave me a product that I will have not been involved with, it will be much more difficult for me to sell. So I work as our product developer, or concept and product developer, which makes me a better salesperson. Without it would have been much, much more difficult, at least I think for me, at least. Yeah. And I think it's been a long period of time in Sweden. It's changed now the last maybe 10, 15 years, but salespeople were really not considered to be a great asset. It's like, you're only a salesperson. Whereas in the United States, it's completely opposite. I mean, salespeople are gods. which they should. Well, I don't think they should be gods, but they should be. I mean, if you don't sell the product, there's no point of designing or developing a product. You have to sell it. It's something I think that Swedish people are becoming much better at now than maybe 20 years ago. And I think it's necessary because if you can't sell your products, it's going to be much more difficult to be a good entrepreneur.
But I think also with with internet and everything's become so much more crowded. There's so much more white noise going on out there. I think the necessity of selling is also just a basic. You have to try and reach out. You have to try and reach through. We're getting some good questions in here from the audience. Let's get something in here from Ali, connected to this kind of. How do you plan your strategy when entering a pretty hectic market?
Well,
or do you enter a hectic market?
Well, if you take the earbuds, for example, it's hectic everywhere. I mean, what basically all distributors start to say, well, my market is the most difficult market in the world, blah, blah, because blah, blah, blah. And it's difficult everywhere. But I mean, I always believe in niches, to niche yourself, because it's easier to communicate your advantages if you have a specific target group in mind. And not only the target group, but you actually design a product that is targeted to a specific audience. And I mean, when I started Urbanista, we obviously weren't the first brand, but we were at least earlier than I was with DeFunc. When I came in, it was just crazy crowded. We managed to get in and to build a sustainable business by creating something unique. I have something that I always need to do for my businesses, is to create what we in Sweden call ett existensberättigande, a right to exist. If you don't have that, don't do it. But if you know why you're there and what you're giving, then it's a whole story. Yeah. And existensberättigande is a word I really like, especially for creating a product. You have to create your own right to exist. Otherwise, and then if you do that, then you can get into a hectic market and still succeed. But you need to know why and how.
Yeah. I will also, and another thing that my experience as well, and I know that's something that you also feel, is that you are never afraid to talk about your ideas, to talk to people with your ideas, which also comes to understanding people and the market. But could you comment on that as well? Don't be afraid to tell people about your ideas, that kind of thing.
No, but I met people that, I mean, obviously, well, more before, because I was an entrepreneur, even though the name entrepreneurship was even used in Sweden back in the 90s. And because of that, I did get some publicity in the 90s about my businesses, and people reached out to me and asked me if I could help them. But the problem was that they didn't want to inform me what they were doing because they would feel, hopefully not because I thought I was a bad guy, but they didn't want to disclose any information because they were afraid people will steal their ideas. And obviously the idea is important, but people don't normally steal the ideas, and it's actually the implementation which is the key to success, how you do it. Because anyone can come up with good ideas, but you have to implement them and do them. Yeah. And I think I've learned so much. Sometimes people don't agree with me, and I don't agree with them disagreeing with my product or with my ideas, but I learn so much by speaking with people. Either they say, well, this is great, or if they say it's bad, then I say, why is it bad? And all this, even though I don't agree with them, I still learn a lot from these people. So, yeah. And to do that in a very, very early stage, I think is really, really important.
And when do you think? I tell the students here at KTH, I say, while you're studying, try something. You're in a super safe environment. You haven't got a house loan or everything else going on. Try something now. Go do while you have this kind of environment. And that's starting something while you're doing not something else, but just do as much as you.
That is something I have told myself many, many times to do, but I never done, which I really urge people to do. I mean, if you have a job, even a job where you make your living, you can spend your weekends, your late evenings preparing a potential startup or even better, if you're a student, you have more time to do it. But because it's so difficult to try to catch up once you started the business, because then so much is going on. And I really wish I would have done that myself. But because I've always worked for myself, I can't really steal time from my current business to develop a new business. But if I had a 40-hour week job, I was going to work, then I could spend the weekends. But as an entrepreneur, I can't do that. And when I was studying, I was an entrepreneur at the same time. So I never really had that chance. But I wish I had.
Yeah, but I think, and this is, again, I'm not going to say, when I was young, but 20, 25 years ago, before the millennium, the idea of starting a company was usually that you start something on the side, and then it takes 3 to 5 years, and then after that you can probably maybe shift over and start working on that, and then you build a business, and which was that was the old way of doing it, but it was still a do-it-yourself kind of thing. And then we've, in my words, my perspective, kind of sort of overcompensated to people and say, come up with an idea, bring in as much cash as you can, as early as you can, and run, which is, a bit of that's the opposite sort of doctrine of the old school one. But how do you feel about I have an idea, I have to bring in $10 billion as soon as possible? What's your take on that?
Well, if I just briefly comment the first thing you said, when I said that you should spend some time when you're working and doing schools, I'm not saying you should actually start up the business. I'm talking about the preparational work.
Yeah.
I think it's super important to get started and work 100% of your time when you start, because otherwise you will never succeed.
Focus, yeah, exactly.
Having that said, going back to your question, and I guess people have different experience of this, but from my experience, the only thing you know about a business plan and business idea is that everything will not happen to what you plan. There's a lot of things you cannot control. And I've experienced that if you bring in an investor, it takes up a lot of time and explanations to say, well, yes, last week I told you that we should go to right. Next week I have to go to the left, and say, well, make up your mind. Well, things happen. And there's a lot of things you don't know. So with my latest project with DeFunc, I now own 100% of the business. And now when I have a turnover of about a little bit more than 100 million Swedish crowns, which is about 10 million euros, now I can start to think, now I want to scale up the business, because I don't think I can do it by myself. It doesn't have to happen in a week or in a month, but within the next year, I do think that an investor would be great to bring in. But too early, I would advise not to do it if you can. Some businesses, you have to have the money if you don't have it yourself. But because I think it's important, first of all, to not get too much diluted. Some businesses are valued a lot even before they start to make revenues. My company would be worth zero if I didn't have any revenues. So if you can, try to build it up a bit, and also learn more about the business and make it a little bit more mature, and then bring in an investor. There's a lot too much. I know entrepreneurs who basically all their time they do is just chase money and really not develop the business that much.
And it's a fine balance there between surviving and not being, anorectically funded and cutting corners too sharply. But on the other hand, also, and it's a fine balance. I agree on that. It's but the further you can take it with your own resources, the more you will be worth when it comes to bringing in external capital as well.
Yeah, so, to me, it's not so much about making the money. Of course, you want money, but for me, the valuation and how much I own. But it's more about controlling the business where I want it to be, which is important.
But that comes back. Yeah, that comes back to what you said as well. Is if you're proud of what you do and what you sell, then you can sell it. That comes back to what you were talking about in the beginning as well. If you can actually stand for your product and your service and say, this is a really, really good product. I've built it myself. I believe in it. I use it myself, and then I can also make other people use it, which is different from if you're not that connected to the thing.
Yeah.
Looking at the time here, we don't want to keep you from conquering the world, of course, or the people from the rest of their day. But we always, as always, end off with the guests giving us their top 3 tips. And I know that Johan has prepared some really good tips for aspiring entrepreneurs here. So We will end off with Johan Wahlbeck's top 3 tips. And the first one, I think we might have touched on it, but it's about perseverance. Things take time. You mentioned that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it always takes about, times P, I've heard 3.14 times what you're expecting. I don't think it normally takes that long time, but it takes longer time. And you have, and you have to, the thing is that sometimes it's like, at least for me, my business becomes very personalized. If something goes bad, I feel really bad. If something positive happen, I'm super happy. And I just think that you need to be ready for that. Things take longer time, and don't give up. Sometimes I think you have to kill your darlings and say, this does not work, and do that quick. I mean, I've seen businesses that say, please don't invest more money. Well, I already invested, let's say, 2 million Swedish crowns. Well, it's not going to be better to lose 4 million if you put it to more. And that is super. And I've learned that sort of the hard way, not dramatically, but you waste a lot of time, not so much money, by not killing my darlings earlier. But you have to be prepared. It takes a long time. It doesn't mean
how do you know when to kill a darling? Do you, the pivot or persevere thing, do you feel it, or do you just have to make the decision yourself and say, this is it, I'm killing this now, I'm moving on?
Well, in my case, it's never happened that a business idea to be killed, but like, let's say a marketing event or something, part of the business that I really wanted to do, and then I spent a lot of time with it, and I spent a lot of money, and then I just realized this will not happen. I cannot fulfill this project, for example. It could be a product, it could be an event, it could be anything, but try to do that as quickly as possible. But even a whole business idea, if you see that this does not work, don't try to persuade you. And you should not give up. But on the other hand, at a certain time, you need to kill a dog. And just because you put money into it, if it's not going to come, you don't want to lose more money and time for that matter.
Pivot or persevere, the entrepreneur's magic, sort of always trying to decide on which. Tip number 2, talk about your ideas. You mentioned this before. Don't be afraid to tell people about your ideas, right?
I especially with one company I had, it would never have happened unless I would have talked. Things just fell in pieces, and people give you advice. People want to help entrepreneurs. And if you speak with them, they could give you good sales leads. They could give you good contacts with people that can help you. And the only way to do that is to tell what's going on. And I would say normally people help you freely. At least I do. If someone comes and talks to me, if I can help them in an early stage with contacts or whatever, I do it for free, of course. And this is something I think people should be using more, and not be afraid that people will steal your ideas.
Oh, good. Thank you. And thank you for the generous approach as well. And I feel the same way. If I can, I do. It's we're all in this together, and somehow. Tip number 3, sell. Don't be afraid to sell your product.
I would say it's not only afraid, you have to sell. If you don't sell it, who else is going to sell it? If you're the creator and you know everything, you have to, I know a lot of people, it's like a lot of my art directors, they say I can't do Excel because it's like in their image, they should not know Excel. And then a lot of people say, well, I can't sell. Of course you can. Anyone can sell. It just needs some courage and some experience. But if you're the designer or the inventor of a product, you're the best possible salesperson. Yeah. And you have to be used for that.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I work with researchers here at the university that think themselves as really bad salespeople because they have this skewed idea of what sales is. But when they start talking about their research, they get super animated and all excited. And they're sort of, look at this incredible thing, and suddenly, you're going and you're sitting there going, yep.
People always, I think Sweden think about salespeople like people are selling advertisement in the newspaper, that they can only talk, and like convince, basically force people then to buy. And I'm not talking about the best sales work is when you're like concept selling. You just tell them what you've done and what it's good for, and then it sells itself.
Yeah.
I mean, a salesperson is not necessarily a characteristic guy or a woman for that matter that can sell things that people don't want. If you have a product that people want, you just need to explain what it is and what it can do for you or for the customers.
That's a quote I will be using in a post in the future LinkedIn post. If you're selling something people want, it will sell itself. So that's completely right. One last question from Elise. And here's the magic question then. What product or service do you miss in the market today? A future success that we don't know about yet. The magic question from Elise Slotte.
Well, I mean, the thing is that if someone, I mean, this doesn't really answer the question. I just, right now, I wouldn't know exactly. I mean, there's billions of imaginary things that I want to be able to read people's minds, and that would be a good invention if someone can launch that. But what I think what I would like to do, I'm very open. I actually I don't read as much now, but I read a lot of tabloid newspapers like Expressen and Aftonbladet, because there's a lot of things you can pick up from those type of magazines. Of course, I read business magazines as well, but I actually feel that I like to be inspired. And if someone tell me, okay, I mean, I've had some talks with investors with DeFunc, and even last fall, I remember I had a discussion with quite a big investment company, and they said, okay, what's the plans for 2021? I said, I have no idea yet, and I didn't. And now we're actually changing the whole thing from DeFunc, because when the multi-room speakers I experienced myself when I was supposed to buy them for my apartment in Marbella, and I was just difficult to find what could be used for our house, and then it came out, and I started to do research about the market and found out that there's really only one player. It's Sonos, and their products don't really look that nice, I think, and they're okay, decent sound, but they're quite expensive, and I saw there's no competition. So I think one should always be open-minded and get inspired by people, going to trade shows, and maybe not the product you see is exactly what you should do, but you can be inspired about it.
Yeah. But the paper example there, I think the paper example is, I mean, I usually joke about people should read the papers because they are full of problems and needs. Yeah. The only thing they are about it, something bad has happened over here. And it's all about a need or a problem or something that's happened that other people can fix.
No, I mean, like one thing is, a lot of them comes from my own needs. I mean, I travel a lot, and this is a business idea I can give to someone if they think it's good. But I mean, I go travel a lot, and I need to go to the gym at least once. I mean, every second day, and I always search for a hotel with a gym, and mainly book them hotels.com. And 9 out of 10 times, the gym that I come to has nothing that I can more or less use. So
there's a fitness room.
I've created this, and so now I created a concept where we can actually create 3 different concept gyms in different sizes to sell to hotels. It's called Gym Away, and basically providing a certain tools, a size A, B, and C. And then you can place that information on the website on hotels.com because they really like the idea. And then the customer knows what they can expect. And you get a good gym, because most of the people in hotels that buys the stuff for the gym has never gone to a gym. Otherwise, they wouldn't have equipped the gym with what's in there. So I mean, exactly. You have to say what do I don't like, and how can I fix an idea or service that actually makes sense to meet my needs. Yeah. If you're always alert, and because it's only go to yourself, what do I don't like in this world? It can be going to the gyms at the hotels. It could be something else. And say, how can I make this solution? I think creativity comes from asking a lot of questions to yourself and then answer them step by step. Okay, the gyms are bad, yes. and then just next question, how can I solve this? And break the questions up. And then after a while, you come up with a complete solution. Mm-hmm. Sometimes
and the funny thing is that when I hear somebody like you saying it sounds like so, of course, obvious. But I will also give you not only that, but I will also say that few people that I know have the ability to repeatedly come up with things that work and that other people want to buy. So, I mean, you have succeeded a number of times, and I know that you will continue succeeding. So it does take, a certain trait as well. We have Elise, you're working on the mind reading. Excellent. Go do. We're looking forward to that one, Elise. And thank you, Ali. I agree. We do need more than 30 minutes, but this is a 30-minute coffee break. So with that, Johan Wahlbeck, thank you so much for spending 30 minutes with me today having coffee. And so good to see you again. I'm super thrilled to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure to both meet you and your public or your audience. It was a pleasure. It was fun.
Thank you very much. And goodbye, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Elise. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And see you all next week. And thank you, Johan.
Thank you.